The Dismantle the Culture podcast focuses on unraveling the layers of rape culture in the attempt of ending it on a global scale. Rape culture is as intricately woven into societal teachings and practices as systemic racism. On Dismantle the Culture, we are not afraid to call any issue by its name. The podcast provides nuanced conversations rooted in facts and, at times, anecdotal experiences. This podcast is more than an educational tool. It is an instrument for advocacy for a better tomorrow for all. The topics discussed range from consent to toxic masculinity to surviving sexual violence. Follow the podcast today and help us dismantle the culture. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dismantle the Culture podcast, where we unravel rape culture one factor at a time. I am your host, Dr. Vernon T. Scott, and this is our first episode. I know that you may have listened to the trailer that I put out there and may have some thoughts about it, but I at least wanted to introduce myself to everyone so you can know who I am, know my background, understand why I research and still am researching rape culture and furthering my knowledge and my personal pursuits around rape culture and how it impacts us as a society, as well as on a global scale. What you may have heard within the welcome message for the podcast is that I am looking to end rape culture on a global scale. So I have big ambitions, and I guess it just has to take one person at a time just so that we can get this taken care of. But who am I? So first off, I want to tell everyone I am a human being. I've had some downsides. I've had some avenues of personal growth, and I'm just approaching this conversation of introducing who I am as well as my history from a perspective of we all have the ability to grow. And there are some things that I am not so proud of that happened in my past that some people may be offended by or just want to cancel me for. And if that is how you feel, that is okay. That is your perspective. That is just how you feel, and you have valid feelings. But this is not the avenue for me to excuse myself in any way. That is not what the purpose of this podcast is about. Is just to mention that we all have our flaws. So like I mentioned, my name is Vernon T. Scott, Dr. Vernon T. Scott. I have a doctorate in education, leadership and professional practice, just to be specific. I also have a master's degree in higher education leadership and a bachelor's degree in creative writing. I also have some certifications as a life coach, cannabis coach, you might as well say. Because technically I can grow, have a store. I have a lot. My cannabis certification has a lot of extensions to it, but I can do a lot in cannabis. Let's just put it that way. Growing is not my forte, I will say that. But back to what I'm all about. I'm working towards earning a certification as a sex coach, so I can better my life coaching. And I'm also working towards a second master's, which is paid for, thank the Lord, a second master's in marriage and family therapy in order to become a sex therapist one day. So I am doing a lot and have done a lot. And I am low-key proud of myself for doing those things. But where am I from? I am from the state of Georgia. I'm happy to be a Georgia peach, and it is what it is. If you're upset by that, I don't care. Fuck you. It is what it is. Oh, by the way, I use profanity. If you did not understand that from my other podcast, the Soliloquy podcast, or if you didn't if you didn't listen to the trailer for essentially this episode or this podcast, but I use profanity. Some of the things that I'm affiliated with, I am a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I also was a member of Sigma Tau Delta, the English Honor Society, National English Honor Society, Alpha Phi Omega, Service Fraternity. What else? I have a lot of things that I'm affiliated with. Oh, Black Wall Street. Not really that active in that as of late, though. Um, Black SAP, which is Black individuals in student affairs. But I'm no longer in student affairs, so probably shouldn't be in that group anymore. But I still miss it. But yeah, there's a lot of other things that I'm affiliated with too. It's just not coming across at this moment. But yeah, I'm a pretty active individual if you if you don't realize that now. I also want to mention just because I am affiliated with those organizations that none of my perspective or even my history is the same perspective as of other individuals in those organizations. It sucks that we have to say that often because a lot of people do tend to generalize. But I am an individual first before I'm anything a part of any organization. So there's that. Now, why did I decide to research rape culture? Now, this is a very, very long history of development for me to get to the point for me to actually research this topic. Now, I'm open about this. I even wrote a book, which is called The Essential Guide on How to Be a Hoe, which is by Slater Jackson, who is me. But, I wrote that book and I mentioned this in that book that I am a survival of childhood sexual trauma. And, as an individual that was victimized in that manner, it's a lot that you have to unlearn and a lot that you have to grow from as well as heal from. And a lot of that healing I had to do on my own because I did not have the financial means to pay for therapy. So I had to be my own therapist for a while, but I also have been in therapy about those things and I'm doing a lot better too. So that's another story. But like I mentioned, I am a survivor of childhood sexual trauma. So that is part of the reason why I chose to go through this journey of researching rape culture. Now, I remember back in college, because before then I was always told that I'm not like other guys. And when I was told that by my peers, it used to always bother me. I used to think, why is it that I'm different from other guys? Are you saying something about me that I'm not getting? Are you just teasing me? Are you saying that I'm less of a man? Are you saying I'm less of a boy or anything of that nature, with being that age? So it never really sat right with me when other people were telling me that. And because I was feeling insecure because of people always telling me that I'm not like the other guys, I always fantasize of being like the other guys. So I even changed my own personal behaviors to fit in with other men to be more like them so that I don't have to continue to hear that I'm different from other men. So I remember playing Call of Duty with friends, and during that time, there was a lot of usage of the word rape when it came to killing people in that game. So if you had a wonderful kill shot of someone, a person would say, "Oh, I just raped them," or some people will actually do a visual representation of them behind somebody in the game and that person didn't know they were there. And of course, the crouch function, so they will crouch, stand up, and do that repetitive motion as though that they're having sex with that person and then kill them, and they will highlight that, "Oh, I just raped that person." And being in that environment, and this is mostly a environment of mostly men, I would voice my concerns like, "Hey, that's not cool. Why is it that we have to say that you raped that person? Like, rape isn't like cool to talk about in that manner. Like, it's very offensive to someone like me who experienced childhood sexual abuse. Like, can we not use the word rape?" And even with vocalizing my disinterest in that manner, there was not much of a change in anyone's behavior. So that was always something that upset me. And that was just me trying to fit in with the crowd while also being gaslit by that same crowd. And that even got to a point that I had to purposely ignore those comments just so I can seem to be comfortable within that space of other men. Again, this is just me trying to avoid the constant "you're not like other guys" comment that I was so used to receiving by that point. Now, because of who I always knew I was, which is a bisexual Black man, it was hard for me to build up a friendship, a friendly bond with other guys, most definitely straight men, because in those spaces you have a lot of homophobia going on. So, of course, attempting to build a relationship, actual genuine friendship with someone, while also not trying to seem as though you're super gay, or because a lot of people just assume that if a guy is having sex with them, they're automatically gay, which is not the case, because bisexuality is a valid sexuality. So rather than portraying myself as my full self, I will just shrink within myself to make other people feel comfortable, just so I can be with the bros, pretty much, and rather always having to be around women, because I do have a very strong connection with a lot of females, and females just gravitate to me. It is what it is, and I'm cool with that, and I'm comfortable with that. But I also know internally I wanted to be around more men. Now, the thing is, with trying to gain that acceptance of heterosexual men, as well as gay men, bisexual men, just trying to gain that acceptance with a lot of individuals from the masculine space, I had to devalue myself in order to become comfortable in those spaces, um, to make myself feel as though I am meant to be in this space, even though it was not healthy for me to be in those spaces. Again, this is rooted in a lot of insecurities of being told I'm not like other men for so long in my life. This is years of being told that, over 10 years, because I think I've been told that since age 6. So I'm not like other boys at that point, but still, I've been told that for a very, very, very long time. It gets to you, rather than, you know, having that acceptance. I often live in a society, well, we live in a society where it was easier to assimilate than to be on the outside of things. And I'm a lot different now, which is why this podcast exists. So within that time frame, I began to adapt a lot of the manipulation tactics that some guys used when it came to how to pick up people. Now, not saying that I used all of those, because I definitely did not. I will say, unfortunately, I did inappropriately grope a guy once, but that's not funny for real. That was an uncomfortable laugh, just to be honest. But I did do that, and that was without their consent. And I do feel bad about that. It was not okay to do that. And for anybody who thinks that's okay, it's really not. It's not. Consent is important, because of a lot of the behavior was internalized. You know how people often say that the drunk mind is the true you? I don't actually believe that. The drunk mind is someone that has lower inhibitions. But when you are extremely drunk, that you don't have real control of who you are and how you react, I think that is when you snap into a part of your subconscious or even your conscious mind, where you follow what you were programmed to be or programmed to do, either by survival or just to fit in, so that you can be amongst the other people around you. For example, when someone gets super drunk and they have the mindset that when you're super drunk, you are supposed to be a party happy person, even though you're not that person often, that's who you become. So I remember there was this time when I was super drunk. Like, I threw up that night and I blacked out that night and I was gone. And I barely even remember half of everything that happened that night. But I do remember an incident where there was this young lady, and I feel bad about this, like to this day. But there was this young lady. She was there at this party with her boyfriend, and I think it was like a Halloween party or something. And I remember seeing her shirt, which I did like. It was a very wonderful shirt. It also had one of my favorite cartoon characters while growing up on her shirt. And I remember just poking at the character. And I was also actually poking at her breast and like the top portion. And, sober mind is like, that was completely inappropriate. And I literally searched for her the next day so I can apologize for my behavior. But it's like those things became rooted into my subconscious, that I became someone who I didn't even recognize anymore, which made me realize that, there's something that has been going on with me that I have not recognized, that I am not looking at, because I was always a person who self-reflected. So when that moment happened, it caused me to self-reflect on, why is it that I became that person that night? Why is it that I behave that way when that is not who I am? And so I began to reflect on that a lot more. And I realized that, one, yes, that behavior is toxic. That behavior is unacceptable. It's definitely not me. It's not who I am. But I also realized that me trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me is what caused me to go down a route where I violated some people's personal space and their bodies by not obtaining that proper consent to, touch their body. Even though they were fully clothed, I still did not have that permission to touch their bodies. And ever since then, I went on my path of trying to unravel what brought me to that point. And that came up into the discussion of rape culture. And I looked at some of the trends and from what I saw in other individuals that I was hanging out with, also some of my frat brothers, not necessarily those of my chapter, but those who were of different chapters, how they interacted with people and how other men interacted with women, how women interact with other women and men, and how some men interacted with, how everyone was interacting with themselves. And then my campus started to do more, had a broader push for Title IX, which I definitely appreciate. That was one of the things that helped me recognize that I was abused as a child. Well, actually, it was a Psych 101 class, but that gave me further insight on more of the things that happened. But when I started to take that class, learn more about sexual assault, learn more about consent, learned which even those programs did not talk about consent as much as it needed to, or how complicated consent can really be versus just a yes or no situation, because it is a lot more complicated than just that. But yes means yes, no means no, and maybe it also means no. If it's not an enthusiastic yes, do not pass go, do not. But that definitely opened my eyes that there was a lot of this behavior going on around me in our society, and it's been going on for way too long. So with that being said, I do want to at least talk about what exactly is rape culture. Now, this is the academic definition that I was able to find, which you can also look in my dissertation to look at this definition. It is from a 2018 article written by Steibert, I believe. That's how you pronounce it. But according to them, rape culture is commonly defined as a culture where rape and other forms of sexual violence and sexually violent expressions occur frequently, and societal attitudes about gender and sexuality normalize sexual violence. So pretty much what this means is that it is a culture where If you sexualize a certain gender, objectify them, if you hurt that person, harm them in any way, it is okay. Most definitely if it is done by a man. You see a lot of this when it comes to court trials where a young man or older man, it doesn't really matter. Most definitely if it's a heterosexual white man, you will definitely see how this plays out. I'm actually going to upload my dissertation defense as an episode so everyone can actually hear everything, most definitely when it comes to a recent case that happened last year. So you can see how it plays out in society, most definitely with court cases. But is where you will see someone who's abused, like violently raped someone, or multiple people, and their sentence is like 2 years. And this is coming from a society and a court system that portrays itself as being some entity that is against sexual violence, especially violence against women, and want to lock up with the rapists and all of that, the pedophiles, all of that. Yet the court systems are quite frequently give them a pass on that behavior. So that is what rape culture is from the academic sense. Now, on the societal side, because I mentioned this in the trailer, that a lot of what I came across within my research was from a societal lens, and that's the most appropriate way to look at it. Yes, on the academic side, we come back and prove that this is truly a part of rape culture, but you have to look at it through an individual's experience first in order for you to make that connection. And a lot of the factors within rape culture comes from what we experience on a societal level, individual level, or within our communities, all of that. Like, for instance, much of rape culture is formed from the belief in rape myths. There's also hypermasculinity, sexual aggression, and sexual coercion. There's male dominance, alcohol abuse, sex jokes, most definitely rape-based jokes. You have victim blaming, which is very, very prevalent when it comes to court cases. So I cannot wait to talk about that one. You even see it in racial relations. Like, it is very ingrained within our society in how we practice everything that we do. For example, I can literally have a Facebook post with a young lady half naked without clothes, well, half naked. So in the bathing suit or whatever the case may be. And that can get a lot of push on social media, which I'm okay with. That is fine. If that is what that person's comfortable with showing, let them do them. I'm all here for it. Love it. It's great. But that will get a lot of push. But whenever you, and that push has a lot to do with the objectification of women rather than the support of that young lady's sexual freedom. And by young lady, I'm literally referring to anyone that's like 21 and over, 18 and over. But because we have to be specific in this society, we really do. But when it comes to, let's say, a woman actually just making a post without a picture saying, I am happy to be sexually free. I'm happy to express my sexuality however I wish. That is always going to be pushed down. That is not going to get any kind of support through algorithms or whatever the case may be. Literally to this day, I cannot even advertise sexual health on Instagram because it's considered pornographic, it's erotic, and it's talking about pleasure, which is a part of sexual health, if we're going to be honest. But anything that is not considered abstinence-based is not going to be something that you can advertise on social media. However, you can advertise based on the objectification of women. Isn't that something that's interesting and worth talking about? So that is what rape culture looks like in everything that we do. And women's empowerment is definitely something that is very important to unraveling rape culture. And that's not to say that men should be left out of that conversation, which definitely no, men, you should feel free within your sexuality, which is why toxic masculinity has to go, because that actually limits a person's sexuality a lot. A man's sexual expression does not have to be confined to just either being the alpha male who cheats on their significant other, or being in the typical missionary position when it comes to how you express your sexuality with your partner. It doesn't have to be the confound box that we create on what it means to be a sexual man. All of that has to go, because guess what? Men do like anal sex. Well, this is something that can really be talked about on the Haliluki podcast, but I'm just making that space to talk about it here because it's relevant. But men are capable of being a lot more expressive with their sexuality than what we make it as. Men are able to be gay. Women are able to be gay. Both genders, well, all genders, sorry, not both, because there's multiple genders out here. And there's transgender males, transgender females, gender non-binary, gender non-conforming. You have not bisexual, that's a sexual orientation, but you have cisgender males, cisgender female. There's so much. It's a lot to learn, honestly. But with all the genders out here, we all have the opportunity to express our sexualities the way that we want to express them. And we also have the right to our own personal autonomy. And our personal autonomy our autonomy is not more superior than another person's autonomy. Meaning, what I want should not be what everyone has to do. I want what I want, and I want other individuals to want what they want. For example, if you are comfortable with the vanilla lifestyle, that is where the sexual expression typically just goes to penetration and penetration alone. You're not necessarily, I think oral is somewhat in the vanilla lifestyle, since it has become a very normal thing. I think it just depends on which side of the oral that's going for, but still, if that is what is your fancy, then that is perfectly fine. That is perfectly okay. And that is just you. And that is, you have all rights to have that sexual expression. Now, when it comes to other individuals who may not be into the vanilla, then they have the same rights as you to express their sexual needs however they want. Now, for some weird reason, whenever I bring that up, because this has happened in the past, someone always mentions pedophiles for some weird reason. First and foremost, this is not a conversation about having any kind of interactions with children. For one, it always makes me uncomfortable because now I have to tell this random stranger that I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. Like, I understand there are pedophiles out here. I understand that there's children themselves who are extremely sexual at a young age, and that is probably due to them being impacted by a pedophile. So I know this is something that happens, but no one's talking about children in this moment. We are talking about adults. Now, if you want to have that conversation about children and their sexual expression, then why not actually educate children properly with a comprehensive educational model so that they are fully aware of the repercussions, the pros and cons of having sex at a young age, so that they're fully educated on what they're getting themselves into. And those same programs reduce children having sex at a young age because they're fully aware of what can and cannot happen with them, expressing their sexuality. But I'm also not trying to police children in what they do, because I'm not trying to have sex with children. I'm sorry, I'm just not. I'm not interested in that. That's it's always a weird question to bring up for some, like, I just never understand that. There's a lot of people who love to sexualize children to make that kind of argument against healthy adults. Well, not just adults in general. expressing their sexuality freely with autonomy is, yeah. So if you had the urge to ask that question, I just want you to look into yourself to figure out why is it that you're sexualizing children in this moment when we're talking about adults. Now, outside of sex ed, there are age-appropriate conversations that kids can have that can also impact rape culture overall. So that is definitely a conversation that is needed to be had, but it's just how you have it. On future episodes, I am going to talk about rape, sexual assault, sexual violence. I'm also going to actually, let me just pull up my my list of things. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, I'm going to talk about sexual misconduct, sexuality, and sexual expression on the college campus as well as off campus. I'm going to have to remember that one. It's not on my list, but I feel like that needs to be a conversation. Sexual harassment, slut shaming, victim blaming, hookup culture, and how that relates to rape culture, party culture, and how that relates to rape culture. Of course, have the conversation about hypermasculinity, alcohol and drug abuse, and how that relates to rape culture, rape myth acceptance, so we can get a general idea of what that is, what that sounds like, and how that portrays itself within our society. Also, gender roles, sexual aggression, sexual coercion, male dominance. I'm also planning on having some guests come on so we can have a deep dive conversation on most of those topics and more, especially on consent, because that is, as I mentioned before, a very, very complicated topic to talk about, yet is also very simple. Again, the bare minimum that you need to understand is yes means yes, and no means no, and maybe is not even on the radar. So what that means, well, actually, before I go into that, that's an enthusiastic yes, not just a regular yes. That means, yes, I would love to have sex with you. That's the kind of yes that you need to get. And also, definitely to go into how the conversation of consent is flexible, most definitely when it comes to engaging in the sexual activity. I, outside of being, a survival of childhood sexual abuse, I've been sexually violated. While I've experienced sexual violence as an adult. Truthfully, I was sexually assaulted not too long ago by someone who had sex with me under false pretenses, and now I'm on some medication to make sure I don't catch anything that I did not consent to being at risk for. So things happen. That's actually going to be an interesting conversation to have with someone. I might try to get a police officer on as well as someone else so we can at least talk about sexual violence and reporting it to officers, because there is hesitancy there, and the statistics show why there's hesitancy there, because it's not often taken seriously. So that will be a very interesting conversation. And this is not a way for me to shame police officers, because they do have a hard job, but there's also a level of accountability that needs to be had in whatever profession you are in. And police are not above that level of accountability. If a doctor has to be accountable, so should a police officer. If an educator has to be accountable, so should a police officer. If a pastor has to be accountable, so does a police officer. So whatever the position may be that you are working in for your job, then there's a level of accountability that is needed. And I am willing and ready to have that conversation. So hopefully I could find an officer of the law who's willing to have that conversation with me and accept pushback. And it's more so of the people versus the position kind of conversation. Be on the lookout. When I do have that, I will let you all know. But I think this episode has gone on long enough. I understand that the thoughts that was going on, there's been a lot of not necessarily flow, but a lot of jump around in topics, which I'm okay with. If you are able to follow it, I appreciate you and I thank you so much. I actually all this were in notes and it's quite lined up. But if you have any questions, concerns, worries, feel free to reach out to me directly through Slater's Playhouse. You can also comment under the YouTube channel because these episodes will be posted there. That's Slater's Playhouse LLC. You can find that on the web at slatersplayhouse.com, and that's SLAYTOR for Slater. Playhouse is spelled Playhouse. So no hyphens, no random things in the middle of that. It's just one word, slatersplayhouse.com. So, and while you're at it, if you are interested in donating to the cause, because I am in the process of developing a comprehensive course that discusses rape culture and also help other people kind of get themselves out of the mindset that they were in when it pertained to rape culture. I really do need the funding for that. So if you are willing to support, please do. You can donate on Slater's Playhouse website, or you can go to the crowdfunding link that I have, which I definitely need to develop. It will be up before this episode airs. I'm just working on getting all the format and the host together. Well, by the time this episode airs, it will all be together, and I'm going to make sure the link is available on Slater's Playhouse. But Slater's Playhouse also has a donating box for you, so you can just click on that and donate it. It's still going to come to this podcast and still going to go towards that course. The goal is to raise $50,000 just so that we can have the course site prepared, make sure we get the videos taken care of. This will also fund the huge amount of money it takes to actually purchase articles when you're not in school. Oh my God, these damn articles are expensive, but it also goes to purchasing books. Some of the books that I already have is Sexual Citizens, Sex Plus. Also, mental health professional needs to know about, well, what every mental health professional needs to know about sex. I have that book. Becoming Cliterate, because, you know, it's always a good book to have. But there's a lot of resources that we need to look into to make sure that this is a fully comprehensive text, course that will relate to everybody, regardless of their gender, their racial background, their experience with sexual abuse. This is a tool to educate and to inform and help everyone grow. So please help us do that by subscribing, sharing this podcast with your friends, donating, and just supporting any way that you can. I understand if someone does feel offended by anything that I say. I understand. This is not me apologizing for that, because I have to know exactly what it was said that offended you for me to actually give a adequate apology. And it depends on exactly what it is that you want me to apologize for. Some things are not going to be apologized for. If it's going to be anything related to my experience and what I had to unlearn, unfortunately, you're not getting an apology for that. Because I'm in a better place now. And if you cannot see that, that's on you. And I cannot apologize for the way that you're currently feeling for that. And that's just a fact. But yeah, other than that, I do want everyone to just be blessed. I hope you all do continue to support this podcast, be willing and open to be informed. Also, when I typically have a workshop related to consent, I always lead that conversation with discussing cognitive dissonance. What I would do, at least for the next episode, I would explain what cognitive dissonance is and explain why I lead with that. Because cognitive dissonance, it can really get to you. So Anyways, thank y'all so much for tuning in to the Dismantle the Culture podcast, where we unravel rape culture one factor at a time. I appreciate you all, and I thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Dismantle the Culture podcast. This podcast focuses on unraveling the layers of rape culture in the attempt of ending it on a global scale. It is more than an educational tool. It is an instrument for advocacy for a better tomorrow for all. If you wish to support, you can subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcasting app or donate to Slater's Playhouse by going to slatersplayhouse.com. That's SLAYTORS Playhouse.com. Support today and help us dismantle the culture.